Ever wonder why the 13B Rotary was really banned? There's a thin line between genius and insanity, and Mazda danced on it with a grin. For decades, they poured obsession, rebellion, and pure engineering chaos into one of the most outrageous engines ever built, the 13B Rotary. It wasn't just an engine, it was a banshee in a metal cage, screaming to redline with no pistons, no rules, and no mercy. So why did the racing world ban it? Why did the streets go silent? This is the story of the engine that broke the mold and paid the price. Too weird to succeed, too wild to survive. Let's unravel the truth behind Mazda's outlaw motor. Most engines use pistons moving up and down, firing in rhythm like a mechanical symphony. The rotary engine threw that script out the window. Instead of pistons, the 13B used two rotors spinning within a chamber shaped like a stretched-out figure eight. It looked strange, sounded wild, and behaved like nothing else on the road. The idea came from German engineer Felix Wankel, but Mazda took that spark and built an inferno. They refined the motory when everyone else dismissed it as a curiosity. While other companies gave up, Mazda doubled down, pouring their soul into perfecting the quirks of the Wankel engine. The 13B was the crown jewel, thin, light, and competent of soaring above 8,000 RPM without breaking a sweat. It didn't just power cars, it gave them character. With the 13B under the hood, Mazda's RX-7 wasn't just another sports coupe. It was a featherweight brawler that punched way above its weight class. You didn't pilot an RX-7, you unleashed it. But every innovation comes with a price, and the 13B's brilliance hit a dark side that would soon come to light. Though immensely brilliant, the 13B was a temperamental genius. Though it caused sacrifice, it could create enchantment on the track. From backyard tuners to Le Mans engineers, anyone who dealt with a rotary engine eventually ran headfirst into its flaws. The apex seal is the core of fragility in any rotary engine. These small metal bits form the essential barrier, preserving compression at the rotor's edges. Unlike piston rings, apex seals faced far more friction and stress. They wore down fast, cracked under pressure, and when they failed, they took the engine with them. Replacing them wasn't just inconvenient, it was expensive. To keep those seals alive, Mazda had to feed the engine a steady diet of oil. The 13B literally injected oil into the combustion chamber. The result? Excellent lubrication, but high emissions and rapid oil loss. Drivers had to constantly top off fluids, and accept a 13B guzzled oil was like a two-stroke on steroids. Rotary engines don't heat evenly. The rear housing in particular cooked under sustained use. It warped, cracked, and created internal pressure problems. Mazda battled this with design tweaks, but thermal imbalance haunted the engine's long-term health. Finally, the elephant in the room: fuel efficiency. The 13B might have been small, but it drank like a V8. Even gentle drivers couldn't escape its thirst. When gas prices rose or emissions targets tightened, the 13B looked more irresponsible than innovative. It was an engine that demanded love, labor, and deep pockets, and that scared a lot of people away. Then came the moment Mazda made history. At the 1991 24 Hours of Le Mans, Mazda did the unthinkable. Their 787B prototype, powered by a naturally aspirated four-rotor engine, closely related to the 13B, not only competed with the best, it won. Against giants like Mercedes, Porsche, and Jaguar, Mazda emerged victorious in what was the world's most grueling endurance race. This wasn't a fluke. The 787B combined lightness, reliability, and balance with that unmistakable high-pitched wail that echoed through the French countryside. It ran for 24 hours at the edge of mechanical sanity, and unlike its piston-powered rivals, it just kept going. It was the first time a Japanese manufacturer won Le Mans outright. and it remains the only rotary-powered car to ever do so. Mazda had achieved what no one thought possible. But instead of ushering in a new era, the win triggered an avalanche of regulation changes. Some say the engine was too loud. Others blamed its thirst for fuel. But the reality was simple. Mazda proved that a rotary could beat the world's best. And the old guard didn't like that one bit. What should have been the dawn of dominance was instead a swan song. Mazda's victory at Le Mans didn't just disrupt expectations, it rattled the establishment. The 787B's rotary engine ran louder, hotter, and arguably smarter than its piston-powered peers. It didn't just win, it outlasted. But that win put a target on Mazda's back. Shortly after their historic win, the FIA introduced a sweeping change in regulations. Starting with the 1992 season, new rules mandated the use of naturally aspirated 3.5-liter piston engines, mirroring Formula One specifications. The language of the rule book didn't explicitly say, "No rotaries allowed," but the result was the same. The rotary was out. Why the sudden change? The official line pointed to unification of engine standards and improved fuel efficiency. But critics saw it differently. Mazda had pulled off an upset with an unconventional engine design, and the traditionalists in motorsport weren't ready to embrace it. Rotary engines consume more fuel and were harder to classify under evolving performance balancing rules. Their distinctive sound was too shrill for some, their success too disruptive. So no, Mazda wasn't banned, but their rotary technology was effectively legislated out of existence in top-tier motorsport. It wasn't a ban in name, it was a quiet burial. Back on public roads, the 13B was both a thrill and a test of endurance. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, it powered the legendary RX-7, a car that earned cult status not only for its looks and handling, but also for the wild heartbeat under its hood. But that same rotary pulse carried baggage that became harder to ignore as time went on. The world was moving toward greener technologies, and emissions regulations tightened every year. The 13B's reliance on oil injection to lubricate its apex seals meant it produced high levels of unburned hydrocarbons, a big no-no for modern environmental standards. Mazda worked hard to clean up the engine's act with the Renesis version and the RX-8, but the fix was only partial. It still couldn't meet stricter Euro 5 regulations without major sacrifices to performance. For enthusiasts, rebuilding a rotary was part of the experience. But the average buyer didn't want an engine that needed a complete overhaul at 100,000 miles, or sooner if driven hard. Even with meticulous care, the rotary's unique stress points and thermal challenges meant frequent repairs and unpredictable longevity. This wasn't a daily commuter's dream, it was a mechanic's recurring side project. By the early 2000s, the competition was fierce. Turbocharged inline 4s and V6s from rivals like Mitsubishi and Nissan offered more power, better fuel economy, and greater reliability. While the RX-7 still had its charm, it was starting to feel like a relic from another era. Mazda gave it one last shot with the RX-8, hoping the Renesis would be a breakthrough. But its compromised emissions, inconsistent reliability, and disappointing sales spelled the end. In 2012, Mazda pulled the plug on rotary production. The 13B, once a symbol of innovation, had become a liability in a world that demanded compliance. Even in death, the 13B refuses to be forgotten. It lives on through the roar of grassroots racing events, the shriek of drift cars lighting up rear tires, and the endless YouTube builds pushing their 13Bs to new limits. Ask anyone who's ever driven a rotary hard, and they'll tell you the same thing. It's different, addictive, alive. The rotary community isn't just made up of owners, it's a subculture. A family bonded by eccentric engines, busted knuckles, and the search for the perfect apex seal. Forums, track days, rebuild videos, They keep the 13B alive in garages and hearts across the globe. Tuning culture embraced the Rotary because it rewarded those willing to learn its quirks. Where others saw unreliability, the faithful saw potential. Where others heard noise, they heard music. No piston engine delivers the same blend of compact size, rev-happy nature, and outrageous personality. And even manufacturers are starting to whisper about its return. Mazda has teased rotary hybrids, range extenders, and experimental projects. Will it come back? Maybe not in the way we knew it, but the soul of the 13B, that rebellious screaming heart, still beats in the minds of dreamers. Because the Rotary wasn't about perfection, it was about passion, and you can't legislate that out of existence. Was the 13B Rotary banned because it was too good? No. It was banned, sidelined, and eventually abandoned because it didn't play by the rules, technical, environmental, or political. It demanded to comprise from regulators, racers, and drivers. And when the world stopped being willing to make those compromises, it was shown the door. But what left it behind was something rare in the world of engines: a legend. The 13B wasn't just metal and fuel, it was a philosophy, a gamble, a beautiful mistake that taught Mazda and the world that the road less traveled often ends at a cliff, but the view is spectacular. Mazda might have turned the page, but the 13B remains burned into automotive history. And like any great outlaw, it went down fighting. We'll be back soon with more untold truths from the world of machines. Until then, let us know your thoughts about the 13B's wild ride in the comments below. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's next.